Those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
You are live.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Caregiver Solution Info Show. I'm Marcia Teele. I'm so glad that you could join us today. We have another wonderful program for you. You know, Caregiver Solutions is a show for you, a family caregiver. If you are a family caregiver, meaning that you're caring for someone who can't care for themselves, especially an adult who really is incapacitated, not just physically, but mentally also. And you have probably no idea when this job was given to you, what you were doing, because people don't really learn about caregiving. They're thrown into that. They don't understand what they should do, how they should do it. They're very confused. They don't understand what is expected of them. And so this show, we've been here almost 7 years, and we have wonderful experts on this program that help caregivers to educate them on different aspects of caregiving, things that you might need to know to make your journey a lot better, and also things for the person that you are actually caring for. We talk a lot about the different types of dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's type dementia, dementia that's related to heart attacks and strokes and things like that. So if you are with us, I'm so happy that you're here, because we are going to be talking today about something that really needs to be talked about more now that our pandemic situation has opened up a little bit, closed back again because of the new variant, opened up again. I think a lot of people are getting very frustrated with this, and it's very hard, not only for families who might want and need to have a loved one go into a long-term care facility because they're under stress, because they can't do it anymore, but then yet you're worried about the COVID and the consequences of that. Also, I'm sure that if you're a caregiver and already have a loved one in a long-term care facility, you're worried also about what's going on. You can't be there. Should you go? Shouldn't you go? Will they let me? A lot of questions, a lot of things that are up in the air. But today, this guest that I have, you're going to love her. She is an expert in all of this. I have known her for over 20 years, and she is a wonderful advocate for families and for their loved ones. And we're going to be talking today to Karen Green. I want to welcome her right now. Hi, Karen.
Hello. It is wonderful to be here. Thank you so much.
I'm so excited to have you. Karen is a nurse and a care manager, so we'll call her nurse care manager.
That's
She's
right.
also a professional guardian,
Yes.
and she's also the owner of Hired Hearts, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in the show. So thank you for being here today.
It's my pleasure.
You have over 20 years experience helping families, being an advocate, not only for families, but for their loved ones, and helping them to understand what is expected, what needs to be done, the should and shouldn'ts of long-term care, all of this. It's all in your wheelhouse.
Absolutely. I like to call myself a medical quarterback.
How's that?
It works.
Well, we just
We're
had
out navigating and troubleshooting and calling the plays.
Well, we just had
Super Bowl.
Super Bowl, right? So that's very appropriate. Super Bowl was just this past weekend, and so you are an advocate and a caregiver and a quarterback, right?
Yes.
And so that's a good analogy because you have to kind of call the plays, right?
Exactly. I gather the information, I assess the situation, and then we call the play.
And tell
And
everybody
make it happen.
what position they need to be in, what they
That's
need
right.
to do, how
This
they
is
need
your
to
job,
do it.
This is your job. This is my job, and we all make it happen.
And so you're a team.
Absolutely.
So you're a member of a team.
It
And we
is.
talk a lot about teams on the show, about how caregivers can't do it alone.
No.
No, and they need a team, and they need different people on their team. So
Yes.
you can be the quarterback, and people can listen to your expertise and win at caregiving.
That's
Okay,
right.
That's the goal.
That is the joy.
Yes, the joy. Exactly, the joy.
Make sure it goes smoothly and successfully.
And caregiving can be a joy, and a lot of times it's not about what you know, but what you do and how you feel and the outcome. And it doesn't always have to be perfect, but it's knowing about the educational part of being a caregiver, right? And so
Yes.
that we're going to be doing that today. We're going to educate. One of the things that I know that you do as an advocate is that you go to a lot of these long-term care facilities, both nursing home and assisted living, even memory care, assisted living.
Yes.
And you have clients that are there, and you do a lot for those clients because the families might be out of town, might not be available, maybe they can't do it. But because you've been here in South Florida and in and out of a lot of these facilities for a long time, I want to talk a little bit about how COVID has changed things, what you see, and then I want to talk about how you could help families that are in town, that are here, help to navigate a little bit better the care of their loved one when they want to be involved, and work around COVID with all that. I know that's a tall order, but you're up for it because you're a winner. You're on my team. So talk about COVID and how it affected caregivers and the patients there not being able to connect.
I would say in the beginning, it was brutal. It was brutal. The facilities, the hospitals, the nursing care agencies, everyone locked down, shut the doors. You could assess your patient, your client, your family through a window outside a door, and you just had a hope that they were in a building that had a first level.
All right, because you can't be taking
If they were
the
on a second floor,
big ladder with you to
bedridden,
be saying hello.
Exactly,
See, you never thought about
exactly.
that.
So, placement, going into those places, putting a client, having them relocate to a facility was just heart-wrenching for the families. You didn't know which way it was going to go. You didn't know if if the COVID would get into the building and go rampant and if they would survive it. We were very successful in the buildings that we placed our clients, the relationships that we've built through the years to allow us special considerations to maybe see the client or navigate. We were strong in navigating. How can we achieve this goal? The family needs to see their loved one. How can we make it happen? FaceTime, Duo with Google, all the platforms, Zoom, whatever it took, we were able to connect the family with their loved one if they weren't able to travel. That was huge.
Yeah, that's big thing right there. And so it made the families feel disconnected. It made the loved ones
Isolated.
isolated and disconnected. And then things started opening up.
Yes.
Okay.
We're so grateful.
And we're so happy about that. They're opening up, still taking precautions. Obviously, a lot of places are still right on top of it,
Yes.
trying to keep it that way, keep it safe, so that families can continue to visit. So one of your duties as a care manager is going in and checking on the different patients in the different facilities.
Yes.
But let's talk now a little bit about how a family member who wants to be involved, who maybe has a mom or a dad or a grandma in a long-term care, and they have just placed and they're not sure about their role anymore and what they could do to maybe help their loved one transition, if it's something new, or maybe help them just in the day-to-day and be a part of that. Obviously, they're not the one taking the majority of the care because that's the facility, but to be part of it and things that they can do from their point of view to feel good about, hey, I'm on top of this. I helped them. I'm checking it out, making sure everything's going well. So talk a little bit about that type of situation.
I would say that the most important thing is you are the number one advocate for your loved one. Nobody's going to know them the way you know them. And nobody's going to know their moods, their behaviors, their triggers the way you do. And so building that communication and the rapport with the staff is huge, especially nursing. That way you can have that free-flowing conversation, making sure that they know what to expect, what a bad mood looks like, what pain looks like, maybe they're more quiet and introverted when they don't feel well, or something's going on. You just get to know them.
So you want to share with the staff who are there on a day-to-day basis more about your loved one so they can understand what they're going through and look at signs for maybe distress or how they handle different situations because they don't know them, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in the beginning. It's really important to try to be an active participant in the beginning to help make that transition as smooth as possible. It's always a difficult transition, more so for the family than it is for the client or for the staff.
Explain that.
I think guilt and fear and relinquishing control, that's a big one.
Yes.
Saying, here, I'm going to hand this person who I adore over to someone else to care for them and only have minimal contact where you used to be 24/7. Now you're an hour, 2 hours a day. Some people even come every day. But the guilt, navigating all that's just huge.
Yeah, very much so. The new resident in the community, I agree, does well because a lot of times that it's a new environment that is actually more beneficial to them than the environment they came from. And we can talk a little bit about that because people say, well, people always say, oh, my loved one will go downhill if I put them into a facility, right? And that's, you hear that. They're not going to thrive. And, I've seen the opposite happen so many times.
Time and time again.
And time and time again, where that person who goes into this new environment has actually elevated and enhanced their quality of life.
Correct.
And people say, well, how does that happen? So, you can speak to that. Obviously, you've seen it with some of your clients.
Yes.
So talk about a non-perfect environment at home and what that might look like that wouldn't be the best scenario, and then talk about that same person moving into an assisted living and why and how that could be better for them.
So, it's more specifically for the person with cognitive impairment, right? I find that many of the clients, their social has diminished. Especially during COVID, everyone is fearful, locked in their homes. They're not coming out. They're not socializing like they were. But also, when there's a cognitive impairment, a lot of times the friends drift away. Card games end. No more mahjong. They can't remember the hands. They can't remember. It gets frustrating. They're not moving at the same pace. So social becomes a problem. Family,
they're not getting invited anymore.
They're not getting invited.
Yeah.
And, the biggest issue I find is that the person who is the uninvitee is the person who doesn't want to see it. They're afraid of the mortality. They're afraid to see the decline or think that maybe it will be them next. So it's usually fear-based.
Yeah.
More than reality.
And sometimes if you have a situation where maybe it's a spouse that is diminished in their capacity with memory loss, right? And it might not be a long-term spouse. I've seen a lot of second marriages where they get married, they're not together really a long, long time, and all of a sudden things are changing in one of the spouses, and it's like, gosh, I thought I was going to live my golden years out and we were going to have a wonderful life. And now I have to be a caregiver because he's got Alzheimer's, which nobody can predict, nobody expects. So a lot of that could kind of come out as resentment, couldn't it?
It can, yes. And no one knows what's coming.
Right.
And, you know, you hope that it goes well and that it's all beautiful and golden. And sometimes it's very challenging and
it's
difficult.
Challenging not only with the resentment that now they have to be a caregiver to take care of someone. And it's not always that way, but I'm just saying these are just some of the scenarios.
Pitfalls,
Pitfalls that things are different for everyone, but just
Correct.
things to be aware of. And they feel sorry for themselves, or they become a martyr, or maybe they're angry. And you have caregivers that are angry at that person because they don't know who they are anymore. They don't remember how to do things. And so there sometimes is a personality conflict between, and the caregiver might yell at that person and they're like, they don't know what's going on and they feel bad. And so you'd really have a kind of a volatile sometimes situation.
Well, I've seen a few things through the years, but sometimes sleepwalking, and sometimes the men who will have nightmares, night terrors, especially if they've been in the service, they'll wake up in the middle of the night and they're battle ready.
Yes.
So there have been some hallucinations, paranoia. You know, it can get scary, especially if they're up and they're wandering at night and that person doesn't feel like they can sleep peacefully, knowing that they're up moving, and the safety factors that come into play. So it's hard. It's hard to, you know, feel rested and ready for the next day when you're not able to rest.
Yes, absolutely. And those tears, those night terrors and those
Yes,
dreams
right.
of veterans are so real.
Yes.
A friend of mine got elbowed in her eye because her husband thought he was fighting in Vietnam, and she had to have surgery. I mean, these things happen, and it's pretty scary.
Yeah, and they don't know it's you. I
Right.
mean, it's not personal, but
Right.
you know, sometimes bad things happen. But overall, you know, those are very few and far between. It doesn't happen all the time.
No, but these are some of the situations that at home that things can happen. A caregiver can get overwhelmed.
And that's when you know it's time to make a transition.
Yeah, and then they're like, they don't know what to do. They might be at the end of their rope.
Right.
And so that's what I want to talk about now. How does a person know that it's time to make that transition from a home setting where they're the caregiver into a community setting where they are allowing other people to care for that loved one? What are the triggers, and how do they know when it's time?
I would say that it's usually when they're feeling very overwhelmed and at the end of the rope, so to say. I would say that it probably needed to happen long before then, maybe 6 months at least. But people, you know, sometimes have a hard time with the reality of making that transition. And how often do people say, well, he's not ready yet. She's not ready yet. But you would be amazed at how easy the transition is if you just gave it a chance.
Now, when a caregiver might say he or she's not ready yet,
They're not ready.
Exactly. We know, being professionals in the healthcare field, we know that they're really saying, I'm not ready to let them go yet.
Correct.
Because if, like you said, if you give them a chance, you'd be surprised of what they can do
Yes.
and how they can transition and how it can benefit their life.
Benefit, exactly, between nursing, you know, if you pick the right facility, making sure that you do that's critical, but having the proper activities and stimulation and nursing oversight and supportive staff is huge.
Yep, absolutely. So there's a lot that goes into this, and
Yes.
we've had discussions on prior shows about actually how to pick the appropriate assisted living and things you should look for and things you should do. But now that you help families to make this transition, what are some of the things that you educate your families on about how to make the transition easier, not only for them, but for their loved one? Are there certain tips that you give them and to calm them down or not make them feel so guilty? What do you say to somebody when they're in that situation?
You know, it's very difficult. It really depends on the situation. Sometimes people will transition better if the loved one backs off and lets them acclimate to their new environment. But then there's the guilt of abandonment. You know, I can't just leave them. But sometimes that anxiety when you come in to see your loved one, whether you're the husband or the wife or the children, it creates more anxiety for the client, patient.
Yeah.
And
Because they feel that.
they see it, they feel it, they know it.
and they feed off of you.
Correct.
Right? It's
Absolutely.
amazing. I've always said that people that have Alzheimer's dementia, they might not be able to express themselves. They might not be able to say what they need to say. But this is also unscientific. You know, I'm not a doctor or a scientist, but my take on it is that their feelings are more intense. They feel. They might not be able to express.
They're
or say,
very aware.
but they're
Body
very aware.
language.
And and they feel it. They know. They have a
Right.
sense of certain knowing, right?
Correct.
And they know even if you didn't say anything to them that, oh, tomorrow we're going to move you into a assisted living, they pick up on it.
Right.
You may not have said a word, but your actions are different, and they just know something's up. They might not know what, but something's up, right?
That's right.
And so it is a hard thing for family members to do that. And like you said, they're afraid, they have fear, they have guilt, they have a lot of questions, right? So when the person actually gets there, right, and you say goodbye to them, and now they're in the hands of the professionals, your caregiving is really not over.
Oh no, it's a new journey.
Yes. And people think that because my loved one lives in a long-term care facility, I'm not a caregiver anymore. But they are, right? And
Absolutely.
explain how they still are.
Well, first, you want to make sure that you help that transition as much as possible, staying in communication with the staff and visiting often if it's going well, and knowing when to back off when it's not. But, you know, making sure that you speak to the staff about the things that they enjoy, foods that they enjoy, activities that they enjoy, trying to set the room or the environment to be as nurturing and as comfortable as possible and as familiar as possible. It's a big adjustment. You know, they're mixing and mingling. Sometimes people who are not used to socializing are now in a population with others, and that's difficult as well.
So because you're still responsible ultimately, you might have the durable power of attorney, you might be the healthcare advocate or healthcare surrogate or proxy, right? So you are responsible still to make medical decisions,
Correct.
make a lot of financial decisions, pay those bills, and you want to make sure that you're overseeing everything that's happening, right? What are some of the other things that if a person has been in a long-term care facility and you want to be involved, right? And you're able to be involved. When you come in and you've talked to the staff, it's not just having that rapport with the staff, right? It's being able to have that communication with them.
Correct.
And ask certain questions. So what are some of the questions that a caregiver might ask either to nursing or the activity staff that would help them understand how their loved one has transitioned or is transitioning into their new environment?
You know, I would start with how are they doing at mealtime? How are they doing with showering? How are they doing with sleeping? Those are the three big factors. And then also most facilities will do a monthly wait to see how that's going, and talking with the staff, you want to check and see how their behavior is. You know, if the medical professionals have been in to see them yet, because doctors do round in facilities. And sometimes they can have a psychiatric component as well, where they need to have that assessment and maybe some medication management, you know, things that weren't done at home that might benefit the client.
So you want to stay on top of everything and ask
Yes.
questions, because
Ask a lot
the
of
more
questions.
questions you ask, the more involved that the staff knows you are. And
Yes.
it's almost like they're going to, I just think it might be just psychological, but you think that they're paying better attention to your loved one because they see someone is involved, right? They see that
Absolutely.
people are calling, people are visiting, they're involved. And I know this really alleviates a lot of the concerns from family when they're able to be involved. And
It's keeping that communication line open.
Absolutely.
And the more you're involved, the more they see that, the more they feel like they can communicate with you, the easier that line of communication is. And it just helps all the way around. It gets them, it allows the staff to really get to know your loved one when you communicate on every level.
Yeah.
You know, the highs, the lows, and in the in-betweens.
Absolutely. Everybody's very complex.
Yes.
So that was really good talking about transitioning. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Karen Green with Hired Hearts is going to be talking about how do you know certain things when it's not only just time, but some other situations that you want to be aware of, especially if you don't live near your loved one and they need help. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Feelings of depression, isolation, and frustration are common among persons living with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's common among those who care for them, too. It takes a lot of patience and courage. It also takes knowing when you can no longer do it alone. At Arden Courts, memory care is all we do. Talk to us. We know. We understand. We can help. Don't let guilt keep you from making the right decision. Visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines.
You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
I'm back, and I want to talk to you today about the 36-Hour Day book. This is an awesome book. And the good news is, because you have tuned in either on the iHeartRadio app, local South Florida radio, or even on the caregiversolution.info website, this book is being offered free to you, and it's from Arden Courts. Arden Courts is our national sponsor. They have about 50 memory care assisted livings throughout the United States. And they help people, but they help people with memory loss and help people that are the caregivers of the people with memory loss. It's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to learn. And Arden Courts wants you to know and to be prepared, because a more prepared caregiver is a less stressed out caregiver. And so Arden Courts is offering this free book, The 36-Hour Day, to you just for the asking. All you have to do to get it is send an email with your name, address, and telephone number. And that email address is delray@arden-courts.com. That's DELRAY at Arden, ARDEN, courts, COURTS.com. Tell them that you heard about the free offer of the 36-Hour Day book on the Caregiver Solution Info Show, and send that email, and they will be glad to ship a book straight to your home. It's absolutely free. You will be so glad to have this information. You can look up different things as things come up in your caregiving journey, or read it cover to cover. It doesn't matter, because it's all good and it's all very relevant, and it's always being updated. And so this is a wonderful book. It is actually written by Dr. Peter Rabins and Nancy Mace. I believe it's in its 5th edition now. So you would be very happy to have this book. So send your email to Arden Courts today, and if you're on the phone with them, ask them some questions. You know, make an appointment, go by, say hello, take a tour. They'll be very, very happy to help you wherever you are. So my special guest today is Karen Green. Karen is a nurse care manager and professional guardian, and she's also the owner of Hired Hearts. And we're talking about when people need to go into a facility, either a long-term care, being at a nursing home, maybe a memory care assisted living. How do we know it's time? How do we make that transition? How can family members stay involved? And Karen, you've been doing this for 20 years, so you have a lot of experience. And I know for a fact that you are very good at what you do. And I've worked with you many times on situations and different clients, and helped everyone. So it's a win-win, right, for everybody, when everybody has peace of mind and they have a better quality of life, because that's what we strive for.
Is the goal.
So we've been talking about families and how they can be involved if they're local, helping a loved one transition, how to make that changeover. But let's talk about adult children. Many times they're living up north somewhere, and their parents have maybe relocated to Florida and they've retired and they're having a wonderful time, but they're getting older, things are changing, and maybe the adult children only get to come down, once or twice during the year when they get a vacation. And in the meantime, they're calling, "Hi, Mom, how are you? What's going on?" But sometimes they can be fooled. And I want to talk about that. So give us a situation scenario of how an adult child could be fooled talking to their elderly parents in far, far away.
So many times, the parent will just say, "Everything's fine. Nothing's wrong. I'm home. Everything's good. I have enough food. The house is clean." If they ask, you definitely need eyes on.
So you're saying that might not be the case.
It might not be.
So
Probably is not. I'm going to go out on a limb and just say there's a really good chance that it's not.
So what could the reality look like if that's not the case? What could actually it be like in that they're not telling?
That maybe they're drinking a little too much alcohol. I've stumbled on that quite often. Maybe they're not showering. Maybe they're not grocery shopping and preparing foods. Maybe they're not taking care of their bills, maintaining their household needs, keeping the place clean. If there's any hoarding tendencies. Isolation, depression are huge, and especially during the pandemic. It's been a really big challenge for people.
So why would it be that a mom or a dad wouldn't actually tell the truth to that adult child and share with them what is the reality of the situation? Why would that be?
You will always be their child. Doesn't matter how old you are. Whether you're 60, you're still 5 in your parent eyes. Always.
So they don't want to burden you, or they don't want to give you that type of responsibility to care for them?
All of that, I would say that maybe there's no self-realization of how bad it is. Maybe they're just really not aware, that usually it's a slow decline. The family that's away, they haven't seen mom or dad in 6 months, a year. They'll say, "Oh, I saw a little bit of it, but I didn't really think much of it. This time when I came," they're shocked. Especially if you do any kind of pop-in or unannounced, that's usually a bigger shock. When parents have time to prepare, they can do a lot to clean up and be ready for that visit.
Yeah. I like what you said about sometimes they're not self-aware.
Yes.
And that might be a slow dementia coming on where they're not aware of certain things, and that they've dribbled all over their clothes and they've had the same clothes on for
Right.
days and days and days.
Or
and,
sometimes an incontinence issue. And if they're not showering, that could be a problem.
yeah. And if there's nobody going in to see them, if they're more
Yes.
isolated, like during COVID, right, where people couldn't go anywhere. I'm sure that has happened quite a bit, where people have been cloistered up in their apartment, their condo. Nobody can come and go. Nobody can visit. They can't get out. And so there's a lot of things that could be happening if nobody is aware and nobody's on top of it and nobody's checking.
Right.
So how does an adult child then know for sure unless they just get on a plane and come down?
Yes, well, that sometimes is what they need to do. Older people in technology, it's very difficult to say, "Oh, the app on your phone, let's FaceTime." And, I think it's starting to be a little bit more mainstream. People are starting to become a little more familiar with it than the beginning of the pandemic, when everybody was like, "I have no idea how to do that." People have navigated it a little bit, but it's hard unless you are here or send someone in. Make sure that if you're not having anybody go in, you really should start with some kind of a housekeeping, maybe a neighbor, close friend checking in, just to see. You have to have some eyeballs on the situation, see what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, maybe enacting those power of attorney documents so that you can see what's going on bank accounts to make sure that there's no inappropriate transactions or exploiters.
Well, there you
taking
go. And
advantage.
you and I have both seen that situation
Many
too.
times.
Yeah. I think that adult children sometimes might even be in denial themselves.
Yes.
Because it's hard for them to see their parents getting older and to
Yes.
picture them as needy and elderly, and it's just they want to believe everything is okay.
And I don't even see that as much as the fear of the conversation with the parent. You know, having to say to mom or dad, I see the decline and I see that you need my help. Let me help you.
Yeah,
That's a hard conversation for some.
it really is bringing that up because a lot of times they're going to get, no, I don't want your help. I don't
Right.
need your help.
It's not
I'm
usually
fine.
a discussion. It's
Yeah.
usually a fight.
Yeah, right. It's not your business. I'm
Right.
fine. Leave me alone.
Right.
Yeah, it's really hard, and we've seen some really tough situations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about too. I mentioned in the first part of the show about sometimes second marriages, and you have a spouse you've married. Maybe you've only been married 10 years, and all of a sudden they're changing on you and they become hard to handle because maybe dementia has been creeping in slowly but surely, and you're feeling very alone, and this spouse has children from another marriage, you have children from another marriage as the caregiver. What are family dynamics look like in that situation, and how can they go wrong?
Oh, they can go very wrong. You're going to spend my dad's money on that, taking care of her, or vice versa. You married dad. You knew what he was like. You knew this could happen, sickness and in health. I've seen...
Till death do us part.
Correct. I've seen a lot of different scenarios. No, you need to be the one to take care of dad. Don't spend our inheritance on a caregiver that's going to cost 2 12-hour shifts, maybe $500-600 a day.
Yeah.
That becomes overwhelming for families.
Yeah, and a lot of jealousy there, resentment,
Anger,
anger,
and then fear.
and expecting maybe your spouse's children to step up to the plate, right? And you just said, well, hey, you knew what you were getting into, right?
I would say it still goes back to communication. Communication is huge. Being able and willing to have those hard conversations, there needs to be one person who can navigate that.
Yeah. These are difficult situations,
Yes.
but there is good news, everybody, because care managers can come to the rescue. And I want to talk about that in a moment, about what a care manager is and what they can do and how it works, because it's so important to have someone on your team who's not involved
Emotionally
involved,
Right.
emotionally involved, right? And I think that is one of the keys, because there's so many emotions when
Yes.
you're talking about caregiving and who should do what and what's right and what's wrong, and a lot of blame that goes
Yes.
on in caregiving. It's a hard thing. I mean, the caregivers have enough on their plate just doing the day-to-day activities and helping the person in managing the day-to-day. But now, you've got all these family dynamics that are intruding into this, making you feel bad, making you feel guilty.
Yes.
Sometimes helping, sometimes, people will step up to the plate and help, but
Yes.
a lot of times you really have to ask for what you want and
Yes.
not expect, right? So there are a lot of expectations, and even expectations when someone places a loved one into a memory care. We should talk just a minute here about realistic expectations, because I want to go back to that in a moment now to talk about realistic expectations, right? When someone has a loved one go in, is it always going to be smooth as glass and never going to have any
Absolutely not.
issues? And why not?
There's a settling in time, and sometimes that can be a week, and sometimes it can be 3 months. And that journey in between, if it's 3 months, is going to be a hard journey, especially if your loved one who's transitioning into a community is a strong-willed and take charge and used to doing things independently. Usually it's the divorced person, sometimes the divorced mom, who, is very strong-willed and doesn't want to give up her independence.
Yeah.
It's a tough journey.
Yeah. So you got to be patient. Patience is
Very
a key,
patient,
right? And
yes.
and do all the oversight and the questions and getting to know the staff that we talked about. But it is to be expected
Yes.
that the road might be a little bumpy, right?
Right.
But the point is getting through that, getting over the
Yes.
bumps to make it.
There is a rainbow at the end of
yeah,
that journey.
Yes, yeah. And I've seen that over and over and over again. And some families just can't see that for the
Right.
rain maybe, and they don't
Yes.
see the rainbow. They see the clouds, and they just don't have realistic expectations.
Right.
But given
there is no perfect environment.
That's right.
And it's never going to be exactly like home. But it will be their home, and trying to be supportive is huge.
right, and things will get done. Maybe not
Yes.
the way you did them or the
Yes.
way you expect them to be done, but they
Right.
get done. The important things get done, and I think that is just something to be said for people that are afraid. They should at least have realistic expectations, and knowing that with patience and perseverance and letting the person have that time to transition, that I would say 99.9% of them do.
Right.
Yeah.
And asking the staff for assistance, they've done this journey, and it's so new to you, but just asking for the guidance is huge.
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely. Yeah. You got to ask, caregivers. Don't
Right.
be afraid to ask, right?
Yes.
We always say
it's not just your journey alone.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yes,
People
it's a
people
team.
do want to help, and people are out there. You just have to ask. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a moment. More with Hired Hearts and Karen Green.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Welcome back. My guest today is Karen Green. Karen is the owner of Hired Hearts. She's also a nurse care manager. And Karen, we've been talking about how families can help their loved one in long-term care situations, how they can transition them from home when it's time. A lot of great information that you're sharing with with our audience today. I appreciate that. So let's just go back to basics, because people hear us talking about a care manager and being advocates, but what is a care manager? What are the things that a care manager can do, because that's what you are, and how does someone pick one? How do they find a care manager in their area?
So care management is, as we discussed earlier, medical quarterbacking, stepping in, doing an assessment, seeing what the need is, and then helping to put a plan together. So there are many different types of people who can do that. I believe that people that can do it effectively are nurses or social workers. They are the most entrenched with the clients. There are some lay people who have taken that journey to be care managers along the way. But my preference would be either the nursing model or the social working model. There are resources. Usually the elder law attorneys that people have worked with would be a great resource. And they're in the community. They're
In other words, to get a referral from
A
them of somebody that
referral,
they know,
right.
that they've worked with before.
And you can Google. There's many options available online, geriatric care management websites, and referral based is always, I believe, the best.
Somebody who's tried and true with
Correct.
success with
If
something.
you just ask the question, there'll be somebody who knows.
Okay, good. So let's say, let's do a hypothetical. So I'm the adult daughter and someone referred me to you, and I call you up and I say, Karen, you got to help me. I don't know what I'm doing because my mom, she's so difficult and I can't deal with her and she won't listen to me. And I'm telling her all the things that I know that she needs to hear, but she's not listening. She's stubborn. I can't do this. What can you help me, Karen?
I can, because I'm not the daughter. And that helps.
That's the
That
first
helps.
that's the first point. Exactly.
Absolutely. So when I go in and meet with the family, I try to just do it as someone who can identify with them and try to make the situation a little less scary and a little more relaxed and not as threatening. A lot of times people, oh my God, you're going to rip me out of my home and throw me in a place. And sometimes it's just going in, being that independent person and talking.
So you're not a threat like maybe a daughter or a son would be seen as a threat.
It's a different dynamic because, I'm an independent person. They don't feel like, they have to talk down to me as their child. I can talk to them one-on-one, try to communicate with them, and see what the fear is, alleviate the fear, and then navigate what needs to be done. So in a non-threatening way, see it clearly, just helps.
And obviously
In every way possible.
Yes, and every situation obviously is
It's
different.
different,
But what are some of the things in the past that you have recommended? Because not everybody maybe is ready to go into a facility because they just aren't appropriate or things.
They're not ready.
They're not ready. Maybe even there's not like a lot of money at that point. A lot of concerns. But so what are some of the things that you can help with, that you can recommend to families that you have dealt with in the past?
So it really starts with that initial assessment. We take the conversation and go through the list of what's going on, what the needs are, and then I go in and do the assessment. So in the assessment, we can see if maybe just putting a caregiver in for a few hours can alleviate the situation. Maybe mom shouldn't be driving anymore. So just navigating what the need is.
So when you say you do an assessment,
Right.
Okay, I know you're a nurse. But are you giving them a physical exam?
No.
How? Okay, I know that.
When I walk in the door, it's a full assessment. I see the way they look, the way they're dressed, the way they communicate, the way the home looks. Sometimes I'll even ask for permission to take a tour of the home, look in the refrigerator, see how they're navigating life. And just talking with them. Are they socializing? Are they eating? Have their habits changed? Are they, talking on the phone? Are they having difficulty, maybe hearing impaired? Maybe they're having a visual impairment, macular degeneration, hearing loss. Those are all factors that will create isolation and create difficulties. So we can, with that assessment, help create the plan to navigate the world. So the most important thing is to keep people as independent and safe as possible. That's the goal.
Right. So thank you I'm being a little facetious there about giving them the physical, but a lot of people that have never dealt with this before, they need to know what an assessment entails, because you're actually looking not only at the person, but at their home environment.
Right.
And all aspects
And
of
their
it.
medications.
And their medications.
And their medical history. And are they in congestive heart failure and eating all kinds of foods that are going to continue to promote congestive heart failure? So, assessing is at every level.
And that's the most important part, to see what the need is.
Right.
And
Managing the medical need and keeping people safe and independent is the goal.
So some of the things then, if after you do an assessment, you might say, Well, I recommend that your mom have some help in the house so many
Right.
days a week, so many hours a day. That could be one of your recommendations.
Correct. Even to alleviate some of the stressors from the caregiver so that they can go and have a little bit of a social life. And that's a nice balance. Just the few hours a day makes a big difference,
Yeah.
or even a few hours a week.
Some other things that you might, even as a nurse, make a recommendation would be in the field of the medication. You might recognize that maybe this person is taking some medications that have contraindications to each other that might not be good, and you can get involved with the doctor, right?
I had a client once, and I went in and did the assessment, and the wife says, "And I don't understand why he's up all night, and he just won't sleep." Well, she was giving his water pill at nighttime. So he was up all night because he had to go to the bathroom.
All night long.
Yeah. So, a little tweak of things, and situation is much improved.
Yeah.
Everybody's happy.
Yes. Well, see, that's just something small that you encountered that you were able to
Right.
correct right there.
Correct.
And that, I'm sure, helped tremendously. She got better sleep because he wasn't up all night and she wasn't, having
Yes.
to also be awake and helping him.
Exactly. Everybody benefits from sleep,
Yeah.
more sleep.
And let's say that you get called in and there's no legal documents in place, because I'm sure you ask who's your power of attorney or who's the healthcare surrogate. So in that instance, you might recommend that somebody go and set that up with an elder law attorney, correct?
Absolutely. There's a point of no return. When there's an impairment and everyone sees it, at some point, the attorneys will not do documents, and you're going to face guardianship at that point, even if you were the child, the family, the one who was supposed to be the person taking care of everything. You need to have your documents in place.
Right. Don't assume just because you're the spouse or just because you're
No.
the adult child.
The
that-
bank doesn't care.
Right. Right. And
The hospitals don't care.
and the court doesn't care.
The court
sometimes
does not
either.
care.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly. So you can't assume. Got to get those legal documents.
You need to be able to advocate for your family.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, advocating. So if someone can't be the advocate, they live too far away, they don't want to be, it's too stressful, they don't,
Or they don't know how.
and they don't know how, then that's where a geriatric care manager such as yourself can come into the situation and help.
Absolutely.
So tell us how someone could find you if they're listening today and they like what they hear and they'd like to contact you. How can they do that?
So they can reach me directly on my phone, 561-432-7800. That is my business line that's forwarded to me, and I will take it wherever. It's a 24/7 service that we provide because most crises happen in the middle of the night, never at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So we are available.
Okay. And you have a website also?
I do, hiredhearts.com.
That's easy. Hiredhearts.com. I love
I am the
that.
hireable heart.
And you have a good heart and a big heart.
Thank
and we
you.
just had Valentine's Day yesterday.
I know,
so
it's a special month for
happy
Hired
belated
Hearts.
Valentine's Day.
Thank you, thank you,
This
thank you.
is so
Same to
appropriate
you.
that you're here talking about the heart and having a good heart and helping everyone, because people need help. And no matter
Yes.
what stage of life brings you, people need help.
And there are resources out there, so
Yeah.
please use them because it's available, and there's no reason to do this alone.
That's right. Well, thank you for being here today.
It's my pleasure.
It was so much fun just to see you again and spend a little bit of time with you,
Same.
and for all your expertise that you do, and the love and the caring and the advocacy that you provide all of the families and their loved ones.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Great. I hope to see you again soon.
Absolutely.
And thank you all for joining in and watching the show. We're live every Tuesday, 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I hope you join us again on caregiversolutions.info. That's the website, or you can find us on the iHeartRadio if you'd rather listen under WNN, the call letters. Thank you for being part of the show today. I learned some things. I hope you did too. Don't forget to email if you want that 36-hour day book. It's free. So send your email to Arden Courts at delray@arden-courts.com. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, and have a good evening. Good night.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions.